Look how angry John Oliver looks. Can you see him? Yeah, I think he doesn't have the show in person, so it's still like the social distancing quarantine show. But let's go through some of this.
Defunding the police absolutely does not mean that we eliminate all cops and just succumb to the purge.
Okay, first point here. John Oliver says, and that audio came through okay? That was good? Okay, so the first point that he makes is that defunding the police does not mean taking all the police out. But it doesn't really... the thing he's saying is actually a lie, okay? I don't know. I want to get into this a little bit later, but talking about Seattle right now. Have you guys seen what has happened in Seattle right now, where we have had these rioters, these Antifa people, take over the Capitol? There's a 6-block radius in Seattle where it's a no-cop zone. We'll get into that, but I just want to prove that, you know, he says this first point, it's not about getting rid of all police, but the people who he's trying to, you know, agree with are actually totally going against everything that he's actually saying. So... let's keep going.
Instead, it's about moving away from a narrow conception of public safety that relies on policing and punishment and investing in a community's actual safety net. Things like...
it sounds like street justice. It sounds like communities being responsible for themselves and not having the police there to help them, which of course, you know, in a utopian sense, it sounds wonderful. If everyone can just handle themselves, be responsible for the things they do, and people are held accountable for what they do, you don't need police. If only the world were so nice and beautiful, we could do that.
Stable housing, mental health services, and community organisations. The concept is that the role of the police can then significantly shrink because they are not responding to the homeless, or to mental health calls, or arresting children in schools, or really any other situation where the best solution is not someone showing up with a gun. That is the idea behind Defund the Police, if you actually listen to it.
Okay, so there's a lot to break down there. I think his video was longer than this, but I just took this one clip that I found on Twitter from it. Okay, so first of all, he talks about taking the money away from the police, defunding the police, and then putting that into things that are community programs like mental health and education and things like that. Again, we would love it if something like that would work, okay? But we've seen all across the country that you have schools. I mean, you have school districts in California where they spend more money than school districts all over the country, and their students do worse. Their students still do worse, okay? You can't just throw money at a problem and think that it's going to fix anything. It's not going to fix anything to just throw money at mental health and have bureaucrats run it. It's not going to help to throw money at schools and have bureaucrats run it. Okay, you have to have actual practical solutions. Because we see, I mean, California, just in general, I bring up California a lot because I live here. I mean, they spent $1.03 billion in a year on welfare spending. $1.03 billion. If you guys have seen Fleeing California, maybe Taylor, you want to drop that in the comments too so that people can watch that. But I mean, California spends drastically more money on poverty measures than any other state. But then they have the highest rate of people who are in poverty. One in five people in California live below the poverty line. So this John Oliver and these other leftists are talking about take the money away from the police and put it in these other things, which are basically just government handouts to different programs and sects. It doesn't actually help, okay? When you throw money at a problem, you actually make things worse. You make things worse instead of having a more market approach to actually fixing these solutions. We'll get into this a little bit later probably, but I mean, one of the biggest problems in the black community is not police violence, is not police brutality. It is the lack of education. If you were to have a more free market approach to education, like you have school vouchers, you have school choice in these communities, I would guarantee you'd see a much better, you'd have a much better education system for these young black kids in America than you're seeing now. You know, but that's something that the left doesn't want to talk about. If they really thought Black Lives Matter, they would address something like school choice. They talk about these countries. Leftists always like to talk about these countries like Sweden and like Sweden, and talk about, you know, this socialist paradise and it's so great there and free education and stuff. But they don't understand that they have charter schools in these places. They have school choice in those countries too. In these countries that have these socialist dream, right? But that's not something that they actually talk about, and it does incredibly well. So if we want to fix the education system for these people, you have to have school choice. Anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that video about just how ridiculous this whole defund the police movement is, and how people at the complete upper echelons. Okay, you have a guy, John Oliver. He has his own show on late night TV, okay? So obviously this guy is wildly successful. Wildly successful guy comes on and says, we don't need the police anymore, or, you know, we need to diminish the police and we don't need to give as much money to the police. But he himself, it doesn't matter to him. He lives in some gated community. He has private security that he can afford. So him not having the police, it means nothing to him. It means absolutely nothing to him to not have the police. The people who not police, who are going to be hurt by not having the police, are these black communities and these poor economic communities that need policing. They need policing there to take care of this. I mean, it's going to turn. I mean, we're going to see right now. I mean, Minneapolis is probably going to, you know, defund the police if they haven't already done it. You know, we'll see how that goes, this experiment. And again, the stuff happening in Seattle, it's going to be like mafia rule. I mean, it's going to be like different gangs running these communities, coming in and, you know, like and trying to protect, I'm using quotations, protect these communities. Like, oh, you don't want your window broken anymore? You give me $100 a week and your windows won't be broken anymore. You know, that's my Jersey accent. That was pretty bad. Anyway, but that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like mafia, like mob rule, and it's going to be really bad. And the celebrities and the rich white leftists are going to be fine, but the poor communities are really going to suffer from this.